morning. Welcome back to the Harvest Table. Thank you for joining me. Today is the second video I want to do about grief and grieving. Excuse me. In the first video yesterday, I mentioned two people in the Bible, Job and King David. And today I want to expand a little bit on part of King David's life that included grief and sorrow. And it's a long story, and I'm going to do my best to condense it. So I pray I'll be able to do that well. We'll see how it goes, and I can't give you all of the scriptures, but I want to give you enough to let you know some of the background in David's story. And I want to talk in particular about three children of David's, and those children are two brothers, Absalom and Tamar. We're going to be in 2 Samuel, verse 13 at first. So the two brothers are Amnon. I hope I'm saying that name right. I'm doing the best I can. Amnon and Absalom. And the daughter of David, her name was Tamar. So the story is that Amnon raped his sister Tamar, and Absalom knew it. And we pick this up in 2 Samuel 13, verse 20. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? But now hold thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. So she stayed there and lived with him. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very angry. And Absalom spoke unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had raped his sister Tamar. And this verse right here I want to read a little bit of in verse 25. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had the sheep shears in Behazor, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold, now thy servant has sheep bearers. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And the king said to him, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him. Howbeit he would not go, but blessed them. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, this is his father, King David, Why should he go with thee? But Absalom pressed him, that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark you now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine. And when I say unto you, Smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not. Have not I commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. So there you have it. This son, Absalom, had hate and rebellion in his heart, so much so that he went to his father, King David, on behalf of the servants and the shepherds and the sheep shearers, and asked his father to release them to go with him into the field. And the king wouldn't have that. He didn't want that to happen. He said no. But then Absalom went a step farther, and look at this. He pressed his father, and so the father gave in and let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. And Absalom absolutely deceived and betrayed his father to get his way. Now, that's all we're going to read there, so that's a little bit of the background. But in the chapters following 13, if you were to take the time to study them, you would find that Absalom's rebellion didn't end there. He turned multitudes of people in Israel against his father, King David, and caused them to become allegiance to him. He wanted their loyalty. He wanted their praise. He didn't want his father to be praised as king. He wanted to be praised. He wanted to be the one in charge. And so, through deceit, he made that happen. He got thousands and thousands of the Israelites to follow his deceitful ways. But in verse 18, you will see it's going to catch up with him. And this is Absalom again in 2 Samuel 18, verse 9. And Absalom met the servants of David, his father. And Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak tree, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it and told Joab. And he said, Behold, I saw Absalom hung in an oak tree. So that is how Absalom met his death. And Joab came and put darts through his heart and caused him to fall down dead from that tree. And that was the end of Absalom. But then in the end of verse 18, we see two or three people come running to the king with tidings. And verse 32, the king said to Cushi, which was one of the men, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Cushi answered, The enemies of my lord and king, all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. And the king was much moved and went up to his chamber over the gate. And he wept. And as he went, thus he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son. Truly, that is a man crying in grief. It didn't matter that David was royal. It didn't matter that David was a king. It didn't matter that David had the allegiance of many, many people around him. The very moment that servant came and gave him the news that he saw Absalom hung in the oak tree, at that very moment, David's heart was crushed. His spirit was broken. He literally was left speechless. All he could do was cry and say his son's name. Oh, Absalom, oh, Absalom, how I would have given my life for thee. You know, isn't it so true that when we lose someone, we often say, Oh, that I could have died in their place. Oh, that this could have happened to me and not to them. Oh, that I could have went on to meet Jesus instead of my son, instead of my daughter, instead of my mother, instead of my spouse. Whomever you want to put in that blank, you would gladly give your life for theirs. And, I can't speak for all mothers, but as a mother, I know in a heartbeat I would give my life for my sons. In a heartbeat. I've lived my life. They are young. They have so much more life to live and enjoy and spend time with their children, the ones that have children, and do things that I've already gotten to do. And if it had to come down between me or my sons, I would gladly say, Lord, please take me instead. And if you're a parent, I think you know that feeling. You know you would rather the Lord take you home than to take your child. And it's very common for a parent to feel like that. But David could not erase what had happened. The death occurred. And there was a time early in Absalom and Tamar and Amnon's life when David could have dealt with them differently. He may have been able to stop the rebellion. He may have been able to stop the deceit. But by the time these things happened, we read about, it was too late. And there is a point in life where there's no going back. Sometimes our children reach that point. Sometimes, no matter what happens, tragedy strikes and there's no more we can do. And that's a horrible place to be in, isn't it? Maybe you find yourself in that place today. Maybe the tragedy has happened and you're left grieving like David, and all you can cry out is, my son, or my daughter, or my spouse, or my mother, or whomever it is. You feel like you wish you could have done something to stop it. You'd give anything, including your life, to have stopped this horrible tragedy, but you can't now. And so we have to deal with the grief. We're left grieving, we're left crying, we're left sobbing, we're left with sorrow. And as I talked about yesterday in those 7 stages of grief, sometimes the grief is in denial, sometimes it's in anger and rage, sometimes it's in bargaining. There's various stages of grief that we will find ourselves in. And there's no time limit on it either. There is no time limit on grief. You could have lost someone 10 years ago or 30 years ago, and the hurt is still as deep as it was then today, because your love for them doesn't go away. You're wanting to spare them the death. That pain doesn't go away. It's something we live with, isn't it? But I want you to know today, you do not share that pain alone. You do not carry that weight alone. I want to share one of my favorite scriptures when I was dealing with trauma and processing all the things that caused me to have PTSD. This chapter was one of my absolute favorites, and it talks about a man of grief and sorrow. And that chapter, of course, is Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, verse 3 through 5. It says in part, "He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we had, as it were, we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows." Surely he has. Isaiah shares 4 passages of scripture known as the servant songs, and this one is the final one presented of those 4 songs. And the book of Isaiah also talks about the Davidic covenant. In Isaiah 55:3, he tells us about the sure mercies of David, God's promises of an eternal offspring, a throne, and a kingdom. The fulfillment of God's promise comes in the form of and witness of Jesus Christ. He triumphed over suffering and grief and brought victory and healing for us all. Not maybe, but surely. Surely, surely it is 100% true that Jesus bore our sorrow. He was well acquainted with grief. And that is why I say, please know today that you do not carry your grief alone. Jesus understands our pain. He understands our afflictions, Verse 5 in chapter 53 says, "But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed." How did I find healing? Through grief, through trauma, through deep wounds in my soul, through this word right here, because it tells me very plain, very simple, that Jesus endured the cross and purchased my peace, and with his stripes I am healed. He wasn't beaten, he wasn't wounded, he wasn't despised, he wasn't mocked, only for himself. That was the price he paid for you and I. Every stripe, every form of mockery, every wound that was put upon him purchased healing and peace and comfort for you and I. So today, may that message stay with you about your grief, that you do not carry it alone. The Lord himself knows our suffering. The Lord himself understands our sorrow. The Lord himself knows the trauma I myself has endured, the trauma you have endured, the betrayal. Sometimes we don't want to, but we feel betrayed by some people sometimes because they left us too soon. We say, "Why did you have to leave? Why did you have to go to that place? Why did you have to do this or that?" And it resulted in their death. Well, we'll never have any answers for that here on earth, but we do know, no matter what the reason was that things happened, God understands our pain. I pray that brings you comfort today, that you realize you have never and will never walk alone. I know, in particular, when a person you love commits suicide, it causes a deeper level of grief and pain and questioning and sorrow. And it leaves the ones behind that love that person with so many questions. And I just want you to know it's okay to question. God can certainly handle any and all questions we have to give him. So it's okay to question why. But I also want you to know that just because we don't get all the answers we want, it does not mean God's love, God's grace, God's mercy, God's comfort is not sufficient to carry you through that journey of grief. It is. He can help you through every question. There was times, some people say I shouldn't say this, but I'm saying it because it's my testimony and it gives God glory for just how much he did heal me. But there were times, day after day, week after week, especially on Sunday mornings, I would sob and say, "God, why don't you just let me die? This pain is too much to endure." Because a lot of you have um, heard my testimony either on the videos here or firsthand know me and know how deep that pain was, because in my trauma, what happened, I had PTSD. So for many years, that was my way, my body system's way of coping, is I just blocked out all the horror, all the violence, all the memories. And then suddenly something happened one day that it all just came flooding back. It was like a dam broke, and 10,000 memories of pain, of violence, of suffering, of every harmful thing you could imagine happened to me came flooding back instantly. And I had to deal with all of that all at once, just like a bomb went off and explodes right in front of you. And as it explodes, you see all that shrapnel and all these things that causes so much damage, but you can't get out of it. It's like if a military person walks over one of those mines and that bomb explodes and all that shrapnel. A lot of times it causes death, but if it don't kill them, it causes many injuries because of the explosion. And so PTSD is like that. When the memories come flooding back, it's like a bomb went off. And there you are dealing with all of that. And so I didn't know how to cope with all of those memories. And the pain was so great trying to process it all that I just asked God every day, why can't I just die? I don't want to live. I don't want to be in this pain. And from the depths of my soul, I meant that. But that's why we cannot ever trust our own feelings 100%. We cannot ever think we know ourselves better than God because we don't. God knew the depths of my pain, and He knew I didn't have the coping skills or the coping mechanisms in place as to what to do with all that pain. At that time, I was making that cry and that plea to die. And He also knew He had plans for me to reach other people. And so He did not let me die. But you know what? He doesn't owe me or you or anyone else any explanation of why He would choose to let us live or to let us die. Some things God will not answer to man. And He can do that because He is the great I am. He is the Almighty. He sees the entire picture while we just see little pieces of the puzzle. We don't see the whole puzzle put together. But God knew from the beginning the purpose and the plans for our life. Jeremiah tells us that before we were even in our mother's womb, before we even were born, He had a plan. And that plan has to make us trust Him. We have to trust the blueprint He has for our life. So do not feel in despair because God doesn't give you all the answers, because He doesn't point blank tell you this is why this happened, that is why that happened. He may never do that in this lifetime. But don't let that separate you from Him. Trust Him as an all wise and all knowing and all loving God. And how much does He love you? So much that He gave His only begotten Son. While we were yet in our sin, Christ died to save you and I. That's a lot of love, isn't it? So I pray for you today that if your spirit is heavy, God Himself will lift your spirit. And I pray that He will bring enough light into your soul to know there is hope. You may only feel one little tiny ray of light, one small beam, but it is still light. And as we accept those small rays of light and let it penetrate our pain, then we will see our soul begins to open more and more spaces for the Lord to heal us. God bless you today. Keep calling on Him. Pour your heart out to Him. Confess all your sorrow, even if you can't even put it in words. Let the tears be your prayer to God because He truly listens. He truly cares. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.